Data protection and privacy teams are under more pressure than ever with new laws, AI oversight, data breaches, and the constant expectation to do more with fewer resources.
That's why TrustArc built a modern privacy and data protection management platform powered by Arc Intelligence. It unifies your tools, automates the work that slows you down, and surfaces what matters most right when you need it.
From guided quick actions to our intelligent assistant, Ask Arc, you get credible, contextual answers backed by expert research, not generic AI guesses.
Finally, privacy that works the way privacy pros work.
Learn how TrustArc helps teams move faster with confidence at trustarc.com/serious-privacy. That's trustarc.com/serious-privacy.
This is Serious Privacy by TrustArc. Here are your hosts, Paul Breitbart and Kay Royal.
We live in strange times that often remind us how important it is to live our lives in freedom and to enjoy our fundamental rights. And that is in the end also what data protection is all about, and why Kay and I love talking about it so much. This week you'll have to make do with the two of us, as we discuss the war in Ukraine, a new law in Utah, the Budapest Convention, new guidance out of the European Union, and 2 or 3 other things. My name is Paul Breitbart.
And I'm Kay Royal, and welcome to Serious Privacy. So, Paul, today is just going to be one of these days where you and I sit here and we discuss what's happening in privacy law. May not be a lot happening week to week, although it seems like 2021 there was. But we'll see. But first, we have to start with the
unemployed question? Yeah?
I keep trying to say the unimportant question. But we have to start with the unexpected question. And today's question is, where do you go for a good idea?
Well, probably right inside my mind.
I was going to say, my thought is always more the I can't even talk today.
Existentialist.
It's the theoretical portion of going inside my mind or going to silence, not going to a who or a what.
Yeah, and probably books. Books help me straighten my thoughts, I guess, and both fiction and nonfiction, by the way. And when reading, all kinds of questions come up.
Yeah, because you like to read that whole nonfiction thing.
Yeah, I do like reading nonfiction. It's a bit of both. I like history books and things like that, or politics, and even some privacy books, although that's more work than spare time. And books always also...
We're going to write the privacy book.
Yeah, someday. Put that on my list for 2025 or so. I think 2022 is pretty much filled up already.
Yeah, agree.
Oh, and I need to do that dissertation first as well. So
you have to finish that first. I need to check and see if I can get mine printed yet, because in Europe, y'all print the book. Here, we have to order it if we want it printed, but there are places that will print it like a hard copy book or something like that. So it should be on the place now for me to be able to go do that. So I'll have to do that. Of course, nobody but me really wants a copy.
But still, it's nice to have a copy of your own book.
Exactly. I think my mom does, but she would never crack the spine. I think my daughter Daslin does. But my daughter Karis is like, yeah, right.
I'm not going to read this.
Exactly.
Good for you. Nice that you did it, but no, thank you.
Exactly. So we have had a few things happen recently. Utah is ready for their privacy law to be signed. It has passed both houses of Utah. It's headed to the governor, but all expectations are the governor's going to pass it.
Well, that's unexpected, to be honest. I mean,
Why?
Utah was not on my list of states to watch, let alone of states to predict that they would be first in line for 2022 adoption.
Right. So I will say that now that they've passed it, it's kind of like, well, of course they did.
And that also means we have a new abbreviation, the UCPA.
Yeah, what do they call theirs? They call theirs the Utah Consumer Privacy Act, the UCPA. Lord help us. There's another acronym for us. We're going to get so tired of acronyms, we're going to have to pass a federal law.
Well, that would be helpful.
Exactly.
But this one won't apply until December 2023. So there is about 2 years to get ready for it.
It does. And we will write it up as we did. We wrote up Colorado before the governor signed it. because we knew it was more likely than not that he would sign it. So we'll go ahead and get Utah written up, get it ready to be published for TrustArc. That way y'all have it. We'll add it to our so many states white paper. Yes, I keep saying we, but TrustArc will have the written up.
Well, it would be you together with the few colleagues at TrustArc that would support you on that.
Exactly. So TrustArc will have it written up. There'll be probably a blog entry, a white paper. They'll add it to that. It'll be ready for that. We'll make sure to give you the links for that so you'll have it. There's nothing shocking in the Utah Privacy Act. There's no private cause of action. And let's see, what else is there that people generally look at? There's no private cause of action, and there is not a consumer privacy agency. There's no rights that are shocking. They do have a definition of sensitive data. It is individuals' racial or ethnic origin, religious beliefs, sexual orientation, citizenship or immigration status, or information regarding an individual's medical history, mental or physical condition, or medical treatment or diagnosis by a healthcare profession. Also, the processing of genetic personal data or biometric data if the process is for the purpose of identifying a specific individual or specific geolocation data. Sensitive data does not include data that reveals an individual's, this is interesting, racial or ethnic origin if the personal data is processed by a video communication service, or if the personal data is processed by a person licensed to provide health care. So,
well, that does make sense to a certain degree, I would say.
Yeah, I think so, because a lot of times we say, you have to look for sensitive personal data no matter what type or what type of record it actually is, what kind of medium it's captured in, because a photo could reveal a person's racial origin or ethnicity or political beliefs, depending on what they have in the photo. So I think it's interesting that they put down that if it's processed by a video communication service. So that doesn't mean just the video or the photo. That means the communication service, which is like Gmail or Microsoft.
Yeah, but I think that's also related to intent. And that is, of course, also something we see under the GDPR. The intent to identify somebody is important when looking at the processing of sensitive data in many situations as well, also according to the guidance. The UCPA, sorry, I still have to get used to the acronym. The UCPA is very much inspired by the CCPA, so it is also about the sale of data, although sale is reduced to monetary considerations. But it does contain, indeed, also a right to opt out of targeted advertising.
And so it defines targeted advertising.
Included. Yeah, so cookies are included here as well, making it even more difficult for companies to indeed recognize all of that. Although at the same time, if you have made sure that you can identify Virginia and Colorado and California, I think you will be able to identify Utah as well.
Yeah, I think so. And whenever I hear the UCPA, I think of the uniform codes, which is very common here in the U.S. So we're going to have to make sure to not get ourselves confused with that. There's also the responsibility according to the roles, whether you're a processor or controller. So they are adopting the controller processor language, which is not like CCPA.
No, that's more like Virginia.
That use controller processor, but they do have requirements for contracts in place with them. So we're starting to see a little bit more consistency coming out, not a whole lot of consistency. They do talk about data processing of personal data concerning a no child, but in alignment with COPPA. So theirs would be the under 13 then. They do have a pseudonymous data or de-identified data concept. So I think this is going to be interesting. I thought Florida would be the next one to pass. So I was taken by surprise by Utah. But again, like I said, once you heard it passed, it was like, well, of course they did.
Why? Why is that? Because they are really not on my list.
Because they have strong family values.
Okay.
And I know that sounds silly, but privacy laws are about protecting people. And I'm not simply grasping for straws here. I'm from the South, which has strong family values. And in dealing with customers that were in Utah, I always aligned very strongly with Utah because a lot of the values and the activities I saw with the people I met in Utah were a lot like what I lived with back in the South. Very strong family values, liking pageants. Big in the South, big in Utah. I know that seems silly, but to me, it's very much an alignment of values. And so when you think of privacy laws, you think of protecting people. So of course Utah passed one because they're very big on family values and protecting people.
Well, that makes sense. But still, I don't believe...
You didn't expect it? Just kind of like I didn't expect it out of Mississippi, but I guess it's the same thing. Strong family values.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people indeed had no idea what to expect here, and that this would be something, or one of the first states to adopt state privacy legislation.
Yeah.
Talking
and one
about
of the biggest companies in Utah, I don't know where they fall in the commercial standing, but one of the biggest companies in Utah is Nu Skin. It's a company that sells vitamins and things, and they use external salespeople and what used to be called multi-level marketing. And they're a big company in Utah, and they're very big on privacy. So I don't know if they had anything to do with this, but if they did, hands off or hats off. Yeah, if they did have something to do with it, then, hats off to them too, hopefully.
And talking about the South, how about Arizona? What is the state of play?
Arizona's the Southwest. The South is what some people refer to now as the Southeast United States. But Arizona, I believe our friend that was on our podcast, Representative Del Grazia, has reproposed his, but I looked at it last week and I don't think it's advanced far, but I did reach out to him and see if there was anything I could do to help with this. Because, as he disclosed before, it comes down to a lot of education and making sure people in the legislature understand what they're trying to do. So
interesting.
Hopefully that will work. I'll reach back out to him and see if there's anything, because I'd love to see one in Arizona, but I think Arizona is really a crapshoot. I really do. We don't have very strong protective instincts here. We've got a Republican governor, yet we went Democratic for the last presidential vote. I don't know that you could call Arizona as a particular demographic at this point. We seem very liberal in some areas and very conservative in other areas. I guess we're just the wild, wild west. We'll just leave it at that. It's a crapshoot. You never know what Arizona's going to come out with.
Okay. Well,
I'll take it as that.
We'll see what will happen there then.
Yeah. So, okay, what else do we have? I don't know that there's a whole lot. We had some guidance come out, I think, in Europe.
Yeah, there was another meeting of the European Data Protection Board, their monthly meeting, and indeed there wasn't a whole range of documents adopted. Some letters that were posted. One of them in relation to the so-called Cybercrime Convention, or the Budapest Convention, which is currently under review. This is one of the conventions of the Council of Europe, which is open to the whole world. So also the US and Canada and various Latin American countries are part of the Budapest Convention. And this is all about cybercrime. So the main negotiation is also typically done by people from the law enforcement sector.
Okay.
Which may already give you an indication of what way those conventions go. It is about law enforcement and not so much protecting personal data. I've actually been in one of the meetings negotiating this agreement when I was still with the Dutch Data Protection Authority, and when I tried to push back on some of the proposals that were made on easier data exchange, and especially about cross-border access to data held in other countries without a mutual legal assistance request, I was actually accused of being a friend of the criminals because I cared for data protection and for our fundamental rights, which are enshrined in the treaties that are foundational to all the work that the Council of Europe does.
I have these visions of you with a flaming sword for privacy, just charging through the opponents like a modern day knight against the Crusades.
Well, if only I had that flaming sword, I might have, but it just ended in words. But this was...
Oh, I'm sorry.
These were...
But I can see you standing firm, too.
Yeah, I mean, these were difficult conversations. Of course it's difficult because you want to ensure that people are safe online. And especially when it comes to grooming and to identity theft and things like that, all those kinds of cybercrime, you want people to be protected. At the same time, you also want due process, or at least I want due process to be respected as well. We have mutual legal assistance agreements, and everybody says they don't work, but nobody makes an effort in improving the agreements or in how they function on a daily basis. So that is one of the things that you could do. Plus, what everybody seems to forget is that almost all data protection laws around the world, at least the omnibus laws, foresee for a vital interest legal basis. So in times of need, especially in life and death situations, or if somebody is abducted, or if you know that somebody is misused in whatever way or form, you are able to process their personal data. There is no limitation. There are always ways out.
Yeah.
And otherwise, there could still be a public interest or a legitimate interest, and everybody, at least everybody that is not known, that does not understand data protection law, still only has in their minds, oh no, but we need consent for everything, and that doesn't work in these situations.
Right.
So the Budapest Convention, the second additional protocol to that convention about cybercrime, was recently adopted and is now up for including by the European Union. And the European Parliament asked for the EDPB's opinion on this cybercrime convention. And the EDPB welcomes some of the safeguards, such as additional provisions on oversights, but, for example, regrets that there is insufficient information to individuals when there is access to their data by third country authorities. And also, not all the provisions in the convention, in the additional protocol, are considered to be in line with our data protection rules. So the board has recommended that a general reservation is made by the EU and its member states to not disclose certain types of data in direct cooperation requests, but indeed let that flow through mutual legal assistance and proper channels instead of providing direct access.
Right. Well, and it makes me think of everything y'all have got going over in Europe right now, a lot of it which does have to do with
protecting individuals.
Online activities.
Yeah.
Yeah, but only to the extent that, Anonymous declared war on Russia and said they were going to help fight the cyber war in what's going on between the Ukraine and Russia right now. Of course, then all of a sudden there were the news reports of don't underestimate Russia's ability in cyber warfare. And I'm like, who has ever underestimated Russia's ability in cyber warfare? That's always been a thing. So I think it's interesting not interesting, it's heartbreaking, it's sad, and it's atrocious. But that being said, it's interesting that modern war is not just physical. It's not nuclear. It's also online. It's also digital.
Yeah, it's absolutely a whole different front in the war. And you have to start asking the question also to what extent this will at some point also really implicate the Western countries in this war between Russia and Ukraine. Of course, the West has been supplying arms and other kinds of military support to the Ukraine, only no bodies yet. But yeah, even that for Russia, according to press releases, is already participating in the war, let alone that if the West will also help to target Russia digitally. We'll have to see what will happen there. It's scary times.
Yeah,
That
it's
said,
horribly scary times.
Yeah, that said, you may have heard at the outset of this podcast, if we've done everything correctly, a small advert for an auction that is ongoing at Katowiki, my employer, this week. We've exceptionally allowed this advert for the podcast because it is for such a good cause. So I hope everybody that is able to takes a look, or at least makes donations to the good causes of your preference, the Red Cross, UNICEF, other NGOs that can support the people in Ukraine and all the refugees. We are at over 2 million refugees that have fled the Ukraine already in the 11 days that this war is old. We are recording this on March 8th. So it's it's heartbreaking to see all these images.
It is. And you probably more so than I know people in the Ukraine, or that have family.
I don't know a lot of people in the Ukraine. I know some people from the Ukraine. I've encountered some also at privacy conferences in the past. But just to realize that from The Hague or from Amsterdam, you're quicker at the Ukrainian border than at the Portuguese border.
Yeah.
There's only 2 countries in between the Netherlands and the Ukraine, which is Germany and Poland. So it is...
Which here in the U.S., it would be 2 states.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. If people that aren't good at geography and can't put this in perspective here, we're talking driving from California to New Mexico. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a bit about, it's a bit like that. It's about 16 hours from here to the Ukrainian border.
That would be like San Francisco to Arizona. Be about the same. Interesting. Put it in perspective there, people. It tells you how very, very close it is. So we have that. We have the guidance coming out, and then we're just going to watch the...
Yeah, back to our regular business, which sometimes is difficult in these times. I also saw posts from Alexander Hanf.
Oh, yes. Those were coming to mind, too. Mostly about cookies?
No, I mean, just also about the Ukraine, that how difficult it is. I mean, we are all passionate for fundamental rights. That's because we are in data protection. These are such human rights violations, such fundamental rights violations that we have to be touched by it. I mean, we are human. I mean, also, of course, on the level of being a human being that just wants to live in safety and security, but also because we care so deeply about fundamental rights, and that is our day-to-day work. And then sometimes it is very difficult to focus on yet another discussion on data transfers or cookies or Google Analytics and look at alternatives when there are so many bigger things going on.
Well, there are. And I mean, that's something that people are saying also. What do we have to talk about? What do we have to post? It's hard to get into the inanity of daily social media or whatever when there really are such big issues going on. And then, of course, there's the critiques that come in and say, yeah, well, you're talking about Ukraine, but nobody talks about Afghanistan or Pakistan or
Syria or
Africa.
Sudan or Ethiopia or, it's all true.
Maybe one day war will go away.
We can only hope.
Hope and pray and hold our breath. And yeah, there's a lot of people in the world that are very, very protected from the realities of war.
So, back to the reality of our podcast and privacy.
Yes, let's see if we can't bring up the tone here a little bit, because... Okay.
Well, the good thing is that with all that is going on, at least I get a lot of energy from my new job and trying to build that new privacy framework within Katawiki, and I hope that is the same for you.
It is. So, okay. So without, whenever I ask, just take for granted you don't have to give away anything confidential. So what are you wrestling with? What are you learning how to deal?
Well, right now I'm wrestling with a tool called RoadMonk. That is a RoadMonk. That is a road mapping tool. And that is basically where I need to construct my whole roadmap for this year. What is it that I'm going to do? What are my priorities? And I had a conversation actually yesterday with Emerald about the one priority instead of the multiple priorities that you have.
I'm building a project plan now.
and creating that one priority is still very difficult. But I think I have more or less the plan mapped out for this year. And the first step I'm going to take is to identify the risk appetite within the organization with a series of targeted cases. What is the leadership team happy with in adopting as the risk for example, for transfers? Are they willing to take a risk-based approach, yes or no? For cookies, how far do they want to go? We are luckily not using the IAB banners.
Thank goodness.
So there I don't have to have difficult discussions, but what else are we going to do?
What about Google Analytics?
Well, what about Google Analytics? Indeed. How are we going to work with that? And what is the risk appetite there? What are we doing with marketing data? What are we doing with HR data? So there I'm going to paint a few pictures, I guess, for our leadership team to give them scenarios and have to make choices. And on that basis, I can then further develop the privacy policy and draft, first of all, the overarching policy and then the underlying processes to operationalize it. I think that is step one for the whole policy. My end goal for Data Protection Day 2023, so in 11 months' time, would be to have a really nice looking, well-filled privacy information center on our website. Okay. So that we can really show how transparent we are with personal data, what we can do, how it all comes together, what processes are in place for people to request copies of their data, to get access, to delete their data, how all of that works, but also just giving all the information about legal bases and about retention periods and all of that.
Okay.
So that is the end goal I'm working towards for year one. And all the steps in between.
I love it that you're looking at year one and an 11-month plan, and I'm looking at, oh my goodness, how quick can I get this done in the next 2 months?
Well, I know I'm not going to get it done in the next 2 months because I need buy-in from lots of stakeholders across the organization that all have their own year plans as well.
Yeah.
Which I have to take into account. So, I mean, I'm new. I can't just say, well, you have to drop everything because I need you now. Well, I can say it, but then the answer will be no. Rightfully so. So I also need to be realistic. And for me, that is making a plan that starts with year one, with a look ahead to what we're going to do in year 2 and 3.
Yeah. And I will say that my drive for the next few months isn't being driven by me. It's being driven by the business that says, hey, we need this to be the right thing for us to do because we're expanding and doing these things. So we need you to step up and move faster. Not quite to that extent of, wow, okay, hurry up, make this happen. But it's a case of, okay, we need to do these things. We want to make sure that we're doing the right things. So we need your project and planning to come along as fast as ours does. And so it's really good to be with the company that prioritizes what I'm doing in the same breath as they're prioritizing what they're doing. They consider me part of what they're doing.
Well, that's good. So what is your priority?
GDPR. That's my priority. GDPR and cookies, different things, everything you need to do under analytics and cookies and trackers with the EU, knowing that when you mentioned Alexander Hanff, that's why that came to mind, because he's very, very outspoken about cookies and opting into trackers and everything. And he would probably have a very definitive answer for this, but the world isn't very definitive when it comes to cookies and trackers.
No, I think that's right. I think a lot of people, a lot of different views, and that's how it all comes together, or that's how it all works, or not work.
Exactly. So I think it's interesting, and I'll go back because I just read a post by him or an answer by him this morning that made me laugh because, everybody's saying, well, you can no longer use Google Analytics for anything. Well, that's not true. As you and I discussed the last time we had a week in privacy, it's all on a risk-based approach, and saying that the GDPR absolutely forbids Google Analytics specifically isn't true because it doesn't. And
no, it doesn't. But it's becoming harder and harder looking at the regulatory guidance and decisions to maintain that you can use Google Analytics that is hosted on a server in the US. If Google were to offer a Google Analytics server in the European Union, which currently they don't, but if they were to change that, then there would be a whole different ballgame. There would be a whole new kind of assessment.
And the problem wasn't that the servers were hosted in the US, frankly. The problems were that Google wasn't doing what they were supposed to be doing according to the processor agreements, which was not using the data for any other format or any other purpose, any other format, using it in any other way. And if you go and you look at it, if someone's logged into Google, when they go to your website with Google Analytics and you happen to have Gmail open, then those cookies will identify and attach. And that's not a problem of Google being in the US. That's a problem of Google not doing what it's restricted to doing based on the processor agreements. So you could use them if they did what they agreed to do and not use the data in any other way.
Yeah, but
they don't.
Even then, I think even then, I think also the data transfer issue that came up in some of the investigations is also problematic because Google is one of those communication service providers where you cannot really take any supplementary safeguards that will actually help you to mitigate those risks.
Well, but Google could encrypt. What was it? Was it Shora we were talking to last week that said it's not a case of, they just willy-nilly grab data from communication services provider. They were intercepting it in open traffic. And
True.
Google encrypts everything. And so that should prevent most of the open interception. And the surveillance requirements or the surveillance findings under SHRIMS wasn't necessarily against a one-to-one investigation. The U.S. government identified it needed to investigate one person, so it went to whatever providers for information on one.
Indeed, there is a big difference between targeted interception and blanket interception.
And mass surveillance, exactly. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of nuances here that I think are getting a little bit of a short shift. And maybe I'm coming at it from a particularly American viewpoint.
Of course you are, because that's your nature.
Yeah, well, and that's my background, and that's my culture, and that's what I grew up with. So it takes an effort to actually put yourself in the foot of someone else, put yourself in the seat of someone else. But still, logically, it makes sense. It seems to me there should be a solution to this. And if anyone could find a solution, it would have to be a tech mecca like Google.
Well, we can only hope. At the same time, we now also have the final guidance from the European Data Protection Board on codes of conduct to be used for international transfers. So that now really becomes a reality. And basically what the board explains is that you can use a code of conduct. It can also be an existing code of conduct that has been approved, but it needs to have a special extension for international transfers. And then basically what you would need to do is include everything that is required for international transfers. So basically, the way I read it, you would take the standard contractual clauses or anything that is like standard contractual clauses, include that into your code of conduct, including the operationalization of all the supplementary safeguards and doing the risk assessments and list for which countries your code of conduct would be valid based on that risk assessment. And then you can get sign-off. For the companies, we have binding corporate rules.
Yeah.
So those also need to be updated with the supplementary safeguards and the risk assessments. But these code of conduct to be used for transfers are the same codes of conduct, like, for example, the EU Cloud Code of Conduct, that can then be used.
That can be approved for data transfer mechanisms.
Exactly. And then you don't need the SECs anymore.
Perfect.
Or adequacy or consent or whatever. So it is an additional transfer mechanism that has now finally been activated.
So Scope Europe can revise theirs to be a data transfer mechanism?
Well, they were already working on a third country module. I mean, I was co-chairing the group while I was still with TrustArc, but they can now really work towards finalizing that third country module, get approval for that, and then gradually expand the countries for which it would be valid, because it would not be valid for the whole world overnight. You actually need to put in the work. But it is of course, easier for a consortium of companies to do that work together, to do those risk assessments together and come up with supplementary safeguards together, than to do it individually for each and every country that you may want to transfer data to.
Agreed.
So this is not the overnight solution that will solve all the Schrems 2 problems. But it is an additional way
There
out.
is no overnight solution that will solve them all.
Well, there is one, and that is the U.S. change. Well, no, that's also not overnight. The U.S. changing the legislation.
Clearly, it's not overnight. But yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Fair enough.
So no, there is no overnight solution. But for sure, this is an additional modality that could actually help deal with all the challenges and at a probably a little more effective level than just the individual SCCs, because you are able to conduct those assessments together without being accused of violating any competition laws, because you are publicly working together on arranging a very specific issue. And it might actually be a way out. So I'm very happy that this is now adopted.
I like
we
it.
also have the first consumer certification mechanisms that are being prepared. So that could also be another way out of this difficulty, at least for business to consumer organizations. Of course, the codes of conduct are all for business to business relationships. But slowly but surely, there is some movement at least.
Which is good, but I will say it's still becoming difficult for B2B companies because a lot of companies have very specific requirements for their privacy transfers. And this has nothing to do with my current employer. This is past experience. Let me just be clear. Because we're not a B2B. They have very specific and targeted privacy requirements for data exchange, whether it's an international cross-border transfer or it's just a processor controller. But in there, they want you to make sure that all your sub-processors agree to the exact same requirements without any recognition that, okay, if you hold your processors, sub-processors to your controllers, to the laws that apply to you and them, and industry practices, whether you call them best practices or standard practices or whatever, you hold them to the requirements, you can't go back and renegotiate every contract based on some controllers' very specific requirements for their data, especially when they're not taking a risk-based approach to their data and they treat all their data the same, even if it's actually not identifiable data. And it's like,
True.
Okay, I need companies, this is in a general data protection privacy sense, I need companies to understand that they need to be practical and reality-based when it comes to negotiating these contracts. And that's one of the things that came out of SHRMS as well. You cannot deploy the exact same controls over everything. You need to specifically identify what are the risks with that processor and the countries that processor transfers data to, and the data that processor is using, and take it as an individualized approach.
Yeah, fully true.
It's very frustrating.
It is.
It's very, very frustrating.
And there is lots more to be said about that, and that is for future episodes. Because
yes, to be continued.
To be continued. This is all we have time for this week. So thank you for listening to another episode of Serious Privacy. If you like our series, please do tell your friends and colleagues about us and rate and review our episodes in your favorite podcast app or on your favorite podcast platform. Should you have any questions or suggestions, please reach out to us via seriousprivacy@trustarc.com or via info@seriousprivacy.eu, via Twitter at @podcastprivacy, or on LinkedIn, just look for Serious Privacy. You will find Kay on Twitter as Heart of Privacy and myself as EuroPolB. Until next week, goodbye.
Bye, y'all.
That was Serious Privacy.
If you're a data protection or privacy professional, you already know the pressure. Non-stop regulatory change, AI oversight, internal demands, and the expectation to somehow stay ahead of it all. And the old patchwork of tools just isn't cutting it anymore.
No. That's why TrustArc created a modern privacy management platform powered by Arc Intelligence. The TrustArc platform brings your workflows, evidence, research, tasks, and applications all together in one unified and intelligent workspace so you don't waste time digging, clicking, or context switching.
With Ask Arc, your privacy assistant, you can ask plain language questions about laws, jurisdictions, or even your own program data, and get credible, cited answers based on NIMBY research and more than 1,000 global laws. It's explainable, transparent, and purpose-built for data protection and privacy.
So if you need to add a vendor, create a cookie banner, or start an assessment, quick actions take formally complex tasks, turn them into bite-sized guided workflows to save you time.
It's a platform that thinks like you, works like you, and helps you move faster with confidence, whether you're a seasoned DPO or you're just getting started.
See how modern privacy gets done. Explore Arc at trustarc.com/serious-privacy. That's trustarc.com/serious-privacy.